Good evening to all of you. I'm playing the role of a journalist today, even though I've never been one, but I'll give it a shot. I think AmCham and all the other organizations, we came together to try to put this meeting together. I had the opportunity for His Excellency to come and share these thoughts with us. We compiled some questions that we wanted to ask him, and I think I will give the opportunity for individuals to ask those questions. I want to take the first opportunity to ask a couple of questions before I come and ask various entities to pose their questions to him. And the questions that we actually deliberated on, based on his speech that we just heard, most of what we were all thinking about has been addressed in here. But I think we will go through it. Maybe we can actually embellish or add more to it. So the first question that I want to ask His Excellency is that I went back to take a look at all the foreign investments that have been coming into the country since 2000. And almost every, looking at chunks of terms, like 4 years, 4 years, 4 years, 4 years. It seems like the largest investment, foreign direct investment that's come in here is a little bit $13 billion. Only two occasions that we had that. And your term was one of those two occasions. And it was about $13.06 billion that came in here. The question I would like to pose to you, this is really significant. How did you make that happen?
Thank you very much. I think that there are several reasons for that, and the first is that we came to meet in the process several investments that were waiting to happen. That is from when I was vice president. And there had been some bureaucratic bottlenecks in terms of bringing them to fruition. And so when I became president, one of the first things that was brought to my attention was that there were several oil fields waiting for their programs of development to invest money. And disjointed enterprises were asking for different things. EPA was making its own demands. Petroleum Commission was making its own demands. GMPC was on a different wavelength. Ministry of Energy was on a different wavelength. And so the investors came and complained to me. And so what I did was to bring all of them together with all the agencies and ask them to resolve the issues collectively instead of dealing with the single agencies. And that was a strategy that worked. And so with the Ministry of Finance, and Mr. Setekwe is here, he was the coordinator, they went out to Akosombo, they discussed all the issues that were outstanding, and we signed the program of development, and the investment flowed in. And that's how come the 10 field and the Sankofa field were delivered. I mean, Sankofa alone was a $6-point-something billion investment to bring it into production. And it came into production just when I was leaving office. And so despite the hard work I did, I handed over the fruits of the hard work to the incoming administration. It was the same with 10 field. We handed over the fruits of the investment to the next administration. And that, ramped up oil and gas production, and it brought in more revenue. It actually tripled or quadrupled the revenue we're getting from oil. The other thing was in terms of project finance. What we did was that before then, there had been this request for sovereign guarantees, for any project that we wanted to implement. And so if you wanted to do a railway, you wanted to do an interchange, the investors were asking for sovereign guarantees. There were two significant projects that we delivered, and all of them major projects. For instance, the port, and I noticed Mr. Samara is here. The new port, we needed a new port. The old port had become dysfunctional because it couldn't cope with the kind of traffic that was coming in. And anytime I flew out of Ghana, my seat in the presidential jet is on the left, and if we turned eastwards, I could see the line of ships waiting to go into Tema Port. And so when I came, I said, what's the problem with Tema Port? Why are there so many ships queued to come in? And they said, well, there are only efficient, berth is the Meridian Port Services, and it has just 2 berths, and so it can't contain as many ships, so they all have to wait until it's their turn. And I said, but so why don't we get a bigger port? They said Tema has exceeded its expansion, and so there's the design for a new port, but it hasn't been taken up yet. And so luckily I went to commission new cranes for the Meridian Port Services berth. And Asuma Banda is still alive, but he was the chairman of MPS. And all of them were the MPS directors. And I said, what will it take to build us a new port so that we overcome the stricture of this one? And they said, oh, if you challenge us, we'll do it. And so I said, I challenge you. Go ahead and build us a new port. Government will not contribute a penny. You have to raise the money yourselves. And that is exactly what happened. Gapoha and their partners built us a new port, which is one of the most efficient ports in the whole of West Africa. Cost more than $1 billion off balance sheet. But that was an FDI, an example of FDI that came in. The same with the airport terminal. Government used to take 60% of passenger service levies and give airport company 40%. And Kotoka International had Terminal 2, which we had renovated over and over again, but the passenger traffic kept growing, and it couldn't cope with the kind of passenger traffic. And so it became necessary to build a new terminal. And so I challenged them again. I said, look, Ghana Airport Company, build us a new terminal. How are you going to be able to do it? And they said, if you release our 60% airport levy and give us all our money, we'll build a new terminal for you. And so Seth is here. I told him, what will it take to release their 60% airport levy? And he said, oh, it's been factored into the budget for this year, but I can assure you that next year we will give it up and we'll make up for whatever revenue shortfall. And so we did that, and they negotiated with a consortium of banks and built us a new terminal at, as foreign direct investment. And so we started to do that with many state-owned enterprises, including the Ghana Water Company and all of them. We said, look, open debt service accounts and escrow part of your revenues so that if you escrow part of those revenues, we can deliver projects. We said that, look, we're going to do BOTs and we're going to do debt service escrows so that part of the revenues of all those agencies can be paid into those escrows and used to service any investors that come on. But I think that where we are, we need to do more BOTs. We need to, use innovative financing to be able to deliver on these infrastructure, project financing and infrastructure development. But more importantly, there's so many areas where if we create the right environment, people are going to come in. One, we want to be the pharmaceutical hub for Africa. Now we have the African Continental Free Trade Area. Already with the investment that I made in the pharmaceutical industry, they expanded their production lines and employed more people because we gave the pharmaceutical industry 6 of them, at that time, 50 million Ghana cedis, which was a lot of money, and they used it to expand their production. And they started to export to Liberia, to Sierra Leone, to Burkina Faso, to Mali, and this is just one sector. There are many other sectors where if we put in the right policy, we can get, FDIs to come in and make Ghana the hub. At the time we did all this, we didn't have the African Continental Free Trade Area. Now we have it. And so Africa is our playground. And if we can't do it alone, domestic investors can't do it alone. But partnerships would be able to deliver, and make Ghana the hub for production in almost every other thing that you can think of.
Decision-making, effective decision-making, it's one of the things that I could take out of this.
Yeah.
And creative, as you say, innovative financings is one, and the second one that I could take. You talk about also talking about strategic, sectors. And that leads on to my next question, which is, which of these sectors, I know every sector is important. You can invest in the education side, you're not getting any returns today, but it's for the future. You can invest in a health environment, you're not getting any revenues from it today, but you need to keep your people alive. So every sector is important, but which of these sectors would you prioritize, say these are strategic enough and that where they will need the most foreign direct investment?
Yeah. Thank you very much. One of the reasons why we're having a rapid depreciation in the city, apart from the debt defaults, which is one of the major reasons, is also that traditional sectors that provided inflows of foreign currency have collapsed. The major and minor season in the cocoa industry this year is providing only 447 tons, 1,000 metric tons of cocoa. Cocoa has been a dependable, source of foreign currency since Gordon Gisberg's time. Unfortunately, under this administration, management of the cocoa sector has virtually collapsed the sector. And I remember before I left office, every bank wanted Ghana's cocoa syndication. It was something that was sought after. And it made an injection of about $2 billion every year directly into our economy. Unfortunately, last year, we went for 800 million. I don't think we got all of it. But this year, there are no takers. Ghana's syndication has collapsed completely. Brought in almost $2 billion in cocoa syndication. And Ghana's cocoa syndication was sought after by all international banks. Yeah. And almost $2 billion was brought in at 1.5%. In the last season, when we tried to go for 800 million, we borrowed at 8%. And this year, there were no takers. The cocoa board went on. Nobody was interested in Ghana's cocoa syndication. And they very disingenuously came and said that they were opening a new era in financing cocoa, and that we're not going to go outside to borrow any money. We're going to finance it ourselves. Where are you going to find that financing? At 30%? We went, there were no takers. And so Cocoa Board said, oh, no, we're introducing a new era of not going outside to finance our cocoa purchases. We'll do it ourselves domestically. But, I mean, really, where are you going to get that kind of money to be able to do that? So resuscitating the cocoa sector is one first priority. Shaking up Cocoa Board and reforming it and making it more efficient is something that we need to do urgently so that we can see a turnaround in the cocoa sector in the next 2-3 seasons at least, in order to bring back, Ghana to its pride of place in the cocoa sector. The farmers are not being given the kind of return on investment that they should get in order that they would take care of the cocoa crop. And so many of them are giving out their farms to galamsey operators to dig out the little gold and then give them their share. So restoring hope in the cocoa industry is important. The next will be the oil and gas sector. We've had 8 wasted years, especially in a time when the oil and gas sector is in transition. 8 years have been wasted. We've not added a drop. Indeed, there's been a 32% decline in our oil and gas sector, when we should have been increasing and pumping like no man's business. So all you guys in the oil and gas sector, I mean, you're going to have an open door, not only to my office, but to my residence. If you have any issues, just let me know. We need to be pumping like crazy and get all that out of the ground. Otherwise, we'll have what they call stranded assets. I mean, if time passes us by, we'll have that gas in the ground, we'll have that oil in the ground, but I mean, the world would have moved on and nobody would need it. But there are many other sectors. I talk about pharmaceuticals, making Ghana the pharmaceutical hub for West Africa and Africa. It's an area that we should look at. We're looking at the tourism sector, making Ghana the tourism hub for West Africa. We used to be, a lot of Ivorians and Burkinabes and co. used to come and spend their holidays here. The planes from Nigeria were always full. When I was president, you couldn't get a flight on Fridays and Mondays because people were either coming or going. And so we need to recapture that. Set up amusement parks, do the things that will bring people here, make Ghana the Disney of West Africa, and let people come. And so that's a sector that we can look at. There are many other places. I mean, reignite the textile sector. Who says that we should start growing cotton before we set up textile industries? Burkina Faso exports cotton. Benin exports cotton. You can buy the raw cotton and produce textiles here. And so attracting investors into areas that will create Ghana as the manufacturing hub of West Africa or Africa is something that we should do. And it's one of the things that we'll do when we open Ghana for business again, allow as many investors to come in here, make sure that our power sector is more efficient. That's why we introduced the Millennium Compact. The intention of that compact was to make Ghana the most efficient electricity producer in West Africa, because we knew that the West African power pool was coming. And that's why we signed all those PPAs, because if we didn't need the power, we could export the power to Burkina Faso and all of them. Today, we are exporting power to Burkina Faso, but because the energy sector has been mismanaged, and we're going to do a forum on the energy sector.
That's excellent, and that's a mouthful. I think talking about the industry that I sit in, which is the oil space, and everything that you've said really resonates. And the energy transition indeed is going to actually move us, from the oil. And we keep saying that we didn't move away from the Stone Age because we ran out of stone. We will move from the oil to gas and to renewables. And it's critical that we accelerate the pace of trying to get the investments in that space to do that, because we just cannot do without foreign direct investment. So hearing that, it's quite, reassuring. Now,
another area is agriculture and agro-processing.
Exactly.
And that's a critical area for us. It occupies a major space in our manifesto. We produce a lot of products, but what has been the missing link is buying the products of the farmers and turning it into value-added products. And so we tell the farmers, grow soya bean, grow cashew, grow what? And we give them the incentives to do that. We give them fertilizers, we give them everything, and all the major agriculture. In our time, it was Metasip, they called it. What creature it was, I didn't know. I told them, find a more farmer-friendly name for it. But then Planting for Food and Jobs came, But in all, the target has been at providing incentives to the farmer to produce. But tying down the marketing and the value addition end has always been the missing link. So how do we buy that cashew of the farmers when they have produced and not get them going around looking for middlemen to buy the cashew? How do we buy that ginger of the farmers? How do we buy the maize from them, produce corn grits and all the other value-added maize products? How do we buy the cassava of the farmers and produce the cassava starch, the gari, the cassava flour for the breweries and all that? That has been the missing link, and that's where we want to concentrate. And that's why we're talking about agro-processing zones in the regions and encouraging the private sector not to now come to look for land with all the litigation and all that. You come, and government has acquired maybe 1,000 acres. We bring water, we bring electricity. You want to set up a factory, you set it up. We give it to you, you set it up. You pay a little ground rent. You buy the product of the farmers you produce. We give you the incentives to export or sell locally. That has been the missing link in agriculture. I'm a farmer myself. I mean, I'm growing 200 acres of soya bean and 100 acres of yellow maize. Wow. And I know what the farmers are going through. It's not only the support that we want, but that after we have produced, last season, I got somebody who came and said, I'll buy your soya bean at this price. I had no say in the matter. And I couldn't keep the soya bean. I had to sell it. Yeah. And even though it gave me just a little margin of profits, I mean, it's the middleman who's going to make all the profits. But this year is even worse because there's been a drought across the Brong-Ahafo into the northern region. And that's how irrigation must come in. We must get investors who can acquire land and put in irrigation facilities to increase production so that we don't have to rely on rain-fed agriculture. I speak for all farmers, even though my farming is at a slightly higher level because I have irrigation facilities. Yeah. So when the rains were not coming, I told them to roll out the spray guns, and we, pumped some water onto the crops. So the crops survived until the rains came again. Yeah. But the farmers next to me and other places don't have the same facilities. So how we are able to help them, either drill a borehole, give them some irrigation facilities, those are things that we need to look at. And so I'm going to be on my agriculture minister's neck. It's going to be the Ministry of agriculture, food, agriculture, and agribusiness. We're going to add agribusiness to it.
That again also, it's really going to be extremely helpful for us. As you know, we started Cosmos Innovation Center during your administration. And we have trained thousands of people in the agri space. Right from seeds, land acquisition, seed selection, planting, harvesting, and post-harvest. Post-harvesting has been a problem. And all of these things that you talk about is something that if we pay attention to, we would. And that also delves into AGOA, African Growth Opportunity Act. Working with AmCham over the years, we went and argued to get it renewed. And it has been renewed and it's going to be expiring soon. And it's very critical that we take advantage of it. US actually gave us that opportunity to export stuff for free. And yet, we haven't taken advantage of it. That is also going to be very, very, very important. You talk about cocoa, which was the main cash for us, crop for us as a country. Ivory Coast, Ghana, and Nigeria produce about 80% of our world's cocoa. And what I just want to slide in here is that today, there's an inscription on a cocoa grown in China that says, cocoa from China, grown in uncontaminated soil. That's the inscription on it. And if you really read deep into that, it's a message that's being given to us. Galamsey, we're destroying our water bodies today. That is going to impact us. How do you see us being able to put our arms around that?
We even are in danger of losing our second position as the largest cocoa producer because Ecuador last season did in excess of 300,000 tons. This year, we've done 447,000 tons. And so even the badge of honor we have as the second largest cocoa producer, we're in danger of losing. And even worse still, we have always had the badge of honor as the second largest economy in West Africa. In 2022, Cote d'Ivoire overtook us. And so we are the third largest economy, no longer the second largest economy. And if you look at our predicted growth rate, Cote d'Ivoire is going to open up the gap. They're going to go to at least $83 billion, and we're going to go to $75 billion. Currently, they are $75 billion, we're $73 billion. And so we are losing a lot of, our badge of honor as a result of the disaster that we have gone through all these years. With regards to illegal small-scale mining, the laws are there, the regulations are there, everything is there. The problem with illegal small-scale mining is implementation. And implementation is a problem because the political class is involved in illegal small-scale mining. The DCs, the party chairman, everybody is there. And that's why I served the warning that if you want to do gold mining, you go and do gold mining. Don't come and take a position in my party or in my government. Because we want to be able to deal with it dispassionately without any conflict of interest. And what we need to do is to make sure that the regulatory agencies are present at the site where that is taking place. Right now, in most of the mining districts, we have no office of the Minerals Commission, we have no office of the EPA, we have no offices of all the agencies that should be the ones, looking after this sector. And so the first thing is to send the agencies to the ground. The next is to review all the concessions, who has what. We need to know who has what and where you are. What equipment is on the ground. So take an inventory of everything that is happening. And then based on that, we put in the policies that would make sure that you go according to the regulation. If you don't go according to the regulation, we take the concession from you. I think if we start doing that, we'll bring some sanity into the sector. But we can only do that if we don't have an interest in ourselves. I'm not interested in gold mining. I'm not interested in Galamsey. I don't have a concession anywhere. And so if I have to implement the law to make sure that we police our environment, I'm ready to do that. But one of the first things we'll do is to get everybody out of the forest reserves. There can be no compromise on that. It's not rained this year because we've destroyed the forest reserves. And if we continue to do that, a time will come when the whole of this country is going to be savanna. And so I have sent a warning, all of those in forest reserves, they should get ready. After 7th January, we're going to send people to march you out of the forest reserves. And I'm going to be a clear. And I'm not going to be a clearing agent and say that, you know, somebody is no longer in forest reserve. We're going to make sure that nobody is in the forest reserves. Okay. I mean, the last statistic I saw from forestry, 37 of our forest reserves have been encroached into. And if that continues, a time will come when the whole tropical rainforest in Ghana will be gone. Right. And once that is gone, we can expect that it would have an effect on the ecosystem, which it is doing already. Yeah. The reason why apart from mismanagement of cocoa, but the reason why our cocoa production is going down is that we are not getting enough moisture for the cocoa trees because we are destroying the forest reserves.
Yeah. Thank you. And I think I will ask the last question and then open it up to the public too. And the last question being, how do you see the impact or effect on the local content that we have today, policy and the FDIs?
Yeah. I think that local content is about a win-win. It must be mutually beneficial to the investor, and it must be to the country. And so local content must be negotiated. It must not be imposed. And so in any sector where we advocate local content, we want to sit with the investors and come up with something that is agreeable. We did that for the oil sector. And today, one of the badges of honor our oil companies have is to show how many Ghanaian companies are winning contracts in terms of oil and gas services. Today, we're all proud that we say, this company is Ghanaian, that company is Ghanaian. But I remember that when we were introducing the local content bill, us and Talo and everybody were up in arms. The American ambassador, which ambassador, all those ambassadors of the country that had companies working in Ghana came and said, you know, this is your local content bill, you know, it's going to drive away investment and all that. And I said, we're not going to be the first country to introduce it. I mean, there are people going to Nigeria and other places where they have local content laws. And it is time for us to transfer knowledge, to transfer technology. And so let us introduce it and build on it. And today, I mean, all the oil and gas service companies are happy to be able to hold up Ghanaian companies and say, look, these are our partners. And it has led to technology transfer. There are Ghanaian companies that are doing fantastically well in terms of providing services to oil and gas companies. It is the same in the gold mining sector. I mean, I can give the example of Engineers and Planners, which is my younger brother's company. He's one of the biggest, you know, local subcontractors to big mining companies like Goldfields, and that's a lot of the hauling and drilling and blasting and everything for them. We can grow companies like that so that Ghanaians also benefit from the resource that we have had. But what I'm saying is it must not be imposed. It is something that we must sit together and we must negotiate.
Wonderful. We will take that to heart. Now we will open it up to...
Thank you very much, Honorable, or His Excellency. I really enjoyed listening to you. I prepared some questions, but some of the issues you already tackled in your presentation. But I wanted to come back because you mentioned two things on the review of the GIPC Act and also on local content. But I think the Honourable next to you asked about the local content. But I wanted to make a short intro about the current GIPC Act, which was established in 2013. That was done, or it was enacted upon under an NDC government. And then in a new act, because in the beginning, in 2001, you could start a joint venture bringing in $10,000. and if you wholly owned was $25,000. So that went to $200,000 and $500,000. And now there is a new bill in Parliament, and that is basically the only thing which is now in Parliament which will improve our business investment climate. We have a lot of companies in the Netherlands who, for them, it's a challenge to get $200,000 out of their cash flow to bring into to Ghana before you earn 1 peso. And with the current inflation rate, because you have to change it into Ghana cedis, you will lose a lot. So that new law is excellent because it goes to 0. But now we are a little bit at a loss, like it's still in Parliament. Nobody can tell us what will happen. I mean, your parliamentarians are about half the chamber. And what are you going to do when you are instated as the new president of Ghana? Are you going to change it back to the old law, or are you supportive? So what can we expect? Because we've been basically talking about this for the past 7-8 years and try to get this new GIPC Act. So I would really appreciate if you could tell something more about that. Thank you.
So CCI France is for Chamber of Commerce and Industries France in Ghana. Okay. So first of all, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm very honored to have a couple of my board of directors and chambers members today. I think your presentation, your speech answered a lot of the questions that I personally had. And I can say that I'm quite reassured to see that there is an understanding of the importance of FDI in the country, because Ghana was labeled as the brand to be the Switzerland of West Africa and gradually lost it. And as much as we hear it in speeches, sometimes it feels when you're operating in business that is not always appreciated. So it was quite reassuring to hear your speech today. We've had an exchange before on local content, so I think your speech was very, very clear. I'll just say one thing, since you've answered most of my question, is the policies are okay sometimes, but the challenge that we have is in their enforcement. And it's in their enforcement that some of our members sometimes come and tell us that some of the treatment is unfair. How can we ensure that from speeches to policy, we can ensure that the enforcement of those policies will allow the foreign direct investors to have a fair treatment so that there can be a win-win? I guess that's my question. Thank you.
On the same wavelength, we're raising the concerns. GRA is there, EPA is there, everybody is there, and you're able to raise the issues that are of concern to you, and we'll do the follow-up. We're not just going to listen to you, but we're going to make sure that those agencies are correcting whatever it is that you guys are raising. And so it's something that it would have it every year. I'm going to be there personally. We'll have lunch together. We'll have a session the whole day. It will be a one-day program, and I'm sure that it will give you enough time to be able to raise all the issues. But aside from that, like I said, there will be an open door. And we're going to have somebody in the presidency who is a go-to person in case any foreign investors are having an issue. And so we'll give you a contact number, we'll give you a person, go speak to this person, and it will give you direct access to come to the president to find out what the issues are so that we can deal with them. And so you're not going to wait once a year for the luncheon, but there will be a system in place where day to day, if there are issues that you are concerned about, you can bubble them up to the level of the presidency.
Thank you. Thank you. Why don't we go to AmCham?
Mr. President, my members are very worried about payment for goods and services. And so what would you do? You did say that you had streamlined it when you were president, but it's become such a big issue, and it's threatening not just their investment here, but it's also threatening investment from their principals into Ghana. I can tell you for sure that there is a big company in the telco sector that has taken Ghana out of its $1 billion investment simply because we are unable to pay them. So what would you do to actually prioritize these payments? And since we know we are at an IMF program, if you can't pay immediately, these are reasonable companies that are here from the long haul, what kind of negotiations would you hold with them to ensure that their principals are at peace with investing in this country? That's just one. I'll take the liberty to ask the next one. You did mention local content, that you're seeking the interests of the investor and the country as well. Now, the situation we have is we have to rope in Parliament because there are certain agencies that have gone to Parliament and now they have the power to just list products every 2 or 3 months. One such agency is the Minerals Commission. So every time they release a list. So take an investor who has invested in product A in Ghana and they are supplying that product. And then in 3 months, the Minerals Commission says, oh, now this must be exclusively local. What happened to their investment? And they must act immediately. So that process of really engaging to see where our capacity is so that we would meet each other halfway has become a bit complex. What would you do to help in the harmonization of such laws to ensure that we gain and then the investor also gains, and at the end, everybody is happy? Thank you very much.
Give a time frame in which those things will come into effect is something that we need to do. And so when I said we'll sit and negotiate, we're not going to spring surprises on existing investors, but if we need to change the laws or we need to bring in new regulation, we will sit with the industry, discuss it, and based on our discussion and negotiations, we'll give enough notice and time frame for those things to happen. The other issue is to do with payment to foreign contractors who have supplied goods and services to government of Ghana. That has been a major issue. When SET was there, we implemented a gift miss. Even though the gift miss was introduced in the time when I was vice president, we actually got it up and running when SET became the minister. And it streamlined payments and contracts. And so invoices were entered into the system, and it was very predictable, based on the inflows and the budget and everything, that people will get paid at a certain time. Unfortunately, that has changed. And there are many people who have waited for many years. I've met many foreign contractors who have done jobs for government, and for 2, 3, 4 years, they haven't been paid. We're going to work to streamline that again. One of the things I said we're going to do is, as soon as we come, we're going to have a national economic dialogue. And that dialogue is going to have foreign investors, it's going to have all stakeholders. And we're going to open the books and show what the state of the economy is. And we're going to come with a fiscal consolidation policy within the framework of the IMF program that has been negotiated by this government. We're not going to renege on the IMF program, but IMF itself will realize that a new government has come. There might be some things that we want to tweak. There might be other things that we think we can bring on board. There are many things that if we were at the table when the program was agreed on, we probably would have brought our own suggestions, but we're not part of that agreement. We didn't sit at the table. We have learned most of the details of the agreements, after the agreement has been signed. And so if we come, we're not going to renege on the IMF agreement, but within the context of the agreement, we might have some innovations and introductions that we think we can make. But I can assure foreign investors that they should not lose hope in Ghana. We'll streamline things again. We'll let the gift miss work again. We're going to activate the contract database so that any contract that is being signed between government and any supplier of goods and services will be entered into the gift miss. And it will give more predictable time frames and flows on which payments will be done.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. My name is Thelma McLean. I have a couple of questions. I don't know whether some have been addressed, but the first one is regarding the tariffs for manufacturers. What is the new government going to do about it when it comes to power regarding tariffs? And the other one is also the nuisance taxes at the port. That definitely, if you bring in a vessels, you find that you have quite a lot of taxes that are nuisance, that you can even pay up to double of that. So that is also something that we wanted to ask. Then also, normally what they say is some incentives for agriculture, but what it is that you are going to do pragmatic to help boost the agriculture sector to get the economic transformation that we are actually advocating for. So these are the 3 key questions that I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think I tried to explain that when I spoke, that a lot of our interventions in agriculture have gone to help the farmer produce more. And so we give them improved seeds, we give them fertilizers, we give them inputs, subsidized inputs, we sell subsidized agricultural equipment to them, and it's like giving a shot in the dark. And so when you have put those things in, the farmer produces, and if he has a good season, he gets a lot of produce. But then who buys the produce of him? And then because there's a glut in maize prices collapse because there's nobody to absorb the excess production from the farmer. If there's a glut in tomato production, there's nobody buying those tomatoes and processing it. And so the price collapses and farmers commit suicide. And so we've only been looking at the production base of agriculture, not at the value addition and the processing. And that's why I say we're going to rename the Ministry of Agriculture so that it changes their orientation. That is not just about giving support to farmers and leaving them to their own fate, but it's going to be the Ministry of Food, Agriculture, and Agri-Business. We must create a new crop of agri-entrepreneurs who would set up processing plants, and they'll buy the produce of the farmers. They will process that produce both for domestic consumption and for export. And so the new focus, and one of the things we're looking at is to make the support to farmers more targeted. There was one time I made a statement, it was misconstrued, and said we regretted selling tractors to farmers. Yes, I said on hindsight, the farmer does not have the capacity to service and maintain that tractor. And so we brought tractors from Brazil, government subsidized them 50%, and we gave to the farmers. And in 2-3 years, those tractors are on cement blocks. They are broken down because they don't know how to maintain those tractors. There's no after-sales service to the farmer on how to maintain those tractors. And that's why we've come with the idea of farmer service centers and say that, look, let it be somebody's business to be the farmer and produce his crop. He doesn't need a tractor. He needs the services of a tractor. Let it be somebody else's business to own and service those tractors and provide the service to the farmer. And so we'll have farmer service centers, which will be private sector led. We'll provide all the tractors, the planters, the harrows, everything that the farmer needs. He will have his catchment area. He would register all the farmers in that catchment area. And he knows that, look, this is the number of hectares under my catchment area. And so at the beginning of the farming season, he'll provide all the services that the farmer needs. And so the amount of money that we budget to put as support to farmers is going to go to the service center. And as a farmer in that catchment area, you must be registered with the service center so that you get the support that we're putting into agriculture. And once you've done that, the service center would also be a microcredit institution. And so if during the farming season you need 200 cedis, 500 cedis, you can go to your service center. It will be like a microcredit institution. You can take it. And when you have harvested your crop, if you want to sell it on the market, it's your business. You come and pay whatever you owe to the service center. If you want the service center to buy it, the service center will buy it and store it in a warehouse. And they can keep it for you. You can sell some of it, store the rest with the service center. And when the price is much higher, and you can get a better price for it, and they sell it, they'll give you a portion of whatever is made from that. So it's more innovative than the shot in the dark we've been doing. We say we spend 1 billion Ghana cedis on subsidizing farmers. But do they really get it? It is subsidized fertilizer. You send it out there. A lot of the complaints are that it goes to party chairmen, and it goes to party women's organizers. So the farmers end up going to buy the fertilizer from a hairdresser who is a women's organizer, or a party chairman. A party chairman who is a mechanic, he's not a farmer, you know. The only way you can get these things to get to the farmer is to make sure that you do an audit in a catchment area of who the farmers are, measure their farms, know what crop they are producing and all that, and then the Farmer Service Center will be responsible for servicing those farmers. But if government wants to do it directly, it will never work out. And so that's one of the things that we're looking at. Nuisance taxes, I talked about them. I said we're going to rationalize the taxes. We're going to look at them. There are taxes on tax, some are cascading. You go to the same market and somebody is 0 VAT rated, somebody is charging 3% VAT rate, another person is charging, and they're all selling in the same market. And so how do we rationalize it so that if they're all selling in Abosiokai, they have a rate that everybody, you know, has an incentive to pay. Because of that, people are evading the VAT anyway. And so you're not getting optimum collection from the VAT. If we rationalize it, it's easier to pay. We're going to make much more money than the current regime that we have. And so we're going to rationalize it so that taxes, and you talked about the port, there are levies upon levies. Some are illegal levies, you know. All kinds of agencies have imposed levies, and they are collecting illegal levies. I mean, those are not levies that they should be collecting. I pay my shipping, I come back, then they say some agent has my document, and then he says I should pay some money before he gives my document. So why are you the agent of whoever is outside there? I paid for my shipping. Your principal should pay you what is owed, but when I come, you won't give me my documents unless I pay you a certain amount of money. And after I finish paying, they say, and staffing charge, something charge. The last time I met the Abosiokai people and I read the taxes on one vehicle. And while I was reading the taxes, they were counting. And we counted 23 different charges. So how do we rationalize it to make our port more competitive? We expanded that port so that we can bring in more volumes. Unfortunately, the volumes have not come because we're charging too many. People are going to Lome with goods that are meant for Ghana and taking them through Lome Port and driving by road and bringing the goods to Ghana. So how do we make our port competitive? It's something we're going to sit with all the stakeholders and we'll agree on how to resolve the issue so that all of us are able to make business thrive. Power has been one of the major problems, power tariffs. And the problem with our power is that in many places, residential power is more expensive than tariffs to businesses and industry. In Ghana, it's the reverse. For political reasons, power to residential consumers is lower than power to businesses. We need to see how we can twist that. But we can only flip that if we improve collections. We have technical losses and we have collection losses. Currently, our losses, if I know from the last figure, is almost 32% of all the power we drive through our transmission. There's no electricity company in the world that can survive with 32% losses. So how do we make the collection more efficient? And that's why we signed the Millennium Compact with the US. It was to make our power sector the most efficient. We implemented all parts of the compact, and we came to the last part of the compact, and I just regret that we didn't get that done, and whatever happened, happened, because that was the distribution end. That was going to introduce private participation at the distribution end. Unfortunately, there was a squabble over the shares in PDS and so on and so forth, and it became a whole mess. And so the US withdrew $190 million. But I believe that if we had moved that compact to the end, today we would have a very efficient electricity distribution system. We would have been recovering a lot of the money from the distribution end. Everybody would have been paying less. And with the PPAs we had signed, we would have had excess power. Today, the line to Burkina Faso, which was financed, we signed the agreement in my time with Agence France de Développement to open the line to Burkina Faso so that we could evacuate excess power under the West African Power Pool. We did all that signing of additional power because we knew the West African Power Pool was coming. Unfortunately, a new government came. They didn't have the same vision as us. They said, why did you sign so many excess power agreements? And it is, there's excess capacity charge and all that. But a lot of that power was going to be evacuated, and so to Cote d'Ivoire, to Burkina Faso, to Mali, and all that. And so today, unfortunately, we've had to cut down supply to our partners with whom we have agreements. And the point is, when you do that, they look for alternative sources of power. And so by the time we're ready to give them power again, they might have developed their own different sources of power. And they'll say, well, you're not a reliable partner. We don't need the power from you. And it's all because we've mismanaged the power sector. ESLA, that was supposed to provide extra revenue to pay off legacy debt, has been collateralized. And we're going to audit how that ESLA money was spent. It was meant for the power sector. What was it spent on? Was it misapplied to the budget? Those are all things that Ghanaians must know. And so we're going to do a forensic audit into all those things so that we learn lessons from them. We can't just sweep them under the carpet. These are things that we must go into so that tomorrow another government doesn't come and do the same things. But I believe that we can turn the power sector around. One of the strategies we have is to push forward with the private sector participation in distribution. In our time, we did the Enclave Power Project, which supplied power to the free zones. And collection was 99% because it was private sector. ECG had a bulk flow meter to the Enclave, and Enclave Power was the one that had the meters. They collected the bills, they prepared the bills and everything. If we bring the private sector in, we would improve collection. We won't have to bother about prepaid meters. They would put those meters there, and they would, make sure that the bills are collected. And ECG will get its money because you have a bulk flow meter, and they pay for the power that you supplied. But until we do that and introduce efficiency, we have a lopsided power sector, and we need to flip it so that businesses can get power cheaper and employ more people because they'll be operating more efficiently.
And I think the transmission losses in transmission is very, very key. It was in this very room here when we launched the final piece of the Millennium Challenge.
Yeah.
And the U.S. ambassador, at that time I happened to be the president of AmCham. We were on phones at midnight trying to figure out how we can avert it.
Yeah.
So until we resolve that, we will continue to have issues in this space.
The decision was to upgrade the transmission system to cut down the technical losses.
That's correct.
And that work started, and I think it's still ongoing, but we need to speed it up so that we can cut down the technical losses, but also cut down the commercial losses by being able to collect, the revenue for the electricity that's supplied.
Okay, so I'm from Jethro, as was announced. So many corporations and investors care about the social cultural environment in which they operate, and they might not necessarily want to enter an environment where there might not be equal rights or some issues. So if passed, how are you going to reconcile the family values bill with attracting FDI, especially from the Western world?
Well, we are a diverse world, and that is how God created us. We have different cultures, and we have a bill that was introduced into Parliament. We're looking at two things here. We're looking at the concept of democracy, of which the West has been the major advocate, that we should adopt democratic systems. And so we've adopted democracy. We have constitutional governance and everything. And it says that Parliament is a sovereign parliament. and it can pass bills and acts for this country. And so the sovereign parliament of this country passes a bill, and it is passed unanimously without objection. And so one, you're telling the president that he should object to the representatives of the people who have passed something unanimously. So that's the first part of it. The second part is we have our cultures, and culture is an embodiment of the traditions of the people. There might be new things that come that are not in tune with the culture. You cannot force it, because when you force it, you get a pushback. And so this whole thing is something that we must look at carefully. But I can just give you what the situation is now. The bill was passed. It's waiting for presidential assent. A citizen of this country filed an injunction, not only against the president signing, but also against the Speaker of Parliament submitting the bill to the president for assent. And that injunction is before the Supreme Court. And so we're all waiting for the next step, for the Supreme Court to adjudicate whether the Speaker can send the bill to the president and whether the president can sign it, because they're saying that it goes against human rights and things. So let's let the democratic and the judicial process work. Let the Supreme Court pronounce. But I just say two more things. One, the Constitution says that if the Supreme Court rules that it's okay for the Speaker to forward the bill for assent, and it also says that whoever injuncted the president has no right to injunct the president, then the president has two courses of action. One, three courses. One, to either sign the bill into law, or two, to return the bill to Parliament because he objects, stating the reasons for which he objects, or three, to refer the bill to the Council of State for advice. Those are the three courses of action open to the president. And so if the Supreme Court rules, then those, if they say it's not right for the Speaker to submit the bill because it goes against human rights, then it's a different matter. If they say, yes, the Speaker can submit it, and the person who filed the injunction has no right to injunct the president, then the three courses of action are open to the president. But there's a fourth thing. The life of Parliament ends on 6th January. And so on 6th January, if none of these happen, the bill expires. And so if the promoters of the bill want to bring it again, they have to bring it as a new bill to the next Parliament. So that's the current situation in which we are. But we must look at all the issues of democracy and all that, but also look at the issues of culture and people's sensibilities and all. And in all that context, I know Ghana will find a way. And so we'll see what happens.
When it goes back to the Council of State, how much time do they have?
I think they have 2 weeks or so, to advise the president. I'm not sure, but now let me add that the issues of that bill, even in advanced countries, has not been settled. I mean, in America and everywhere, there are issues to do with that, whatever you're talking about. And so, even in the advanced countries, they've not quite settled the matter. And so, of course, you can understand that we have issues here.
My name is Priscilla from Canada-Ghana Chamber. My question is, I've had a couple of conversations with some foreign investors who came to Ghana to do business. And the issue was that they complained bitterly about our cedi fluctuation. They complained bitterly about the policies, some of the policies we have in this country. They complained bitterly about how they struggle going through middlemen to get a lot of things like registration of their businesses. Taxes in this country is eating them up. Now, this brings me to my question. My question is, how will your administration, Your Excellency, address potential concerns from foreign investors regarding regulatory and political stability? And secondly, what steps will you take to ensure that the foreign direct investments are distributed equitably across different regions and sectors? Thank you.
Thank you. That is two questions in one. The first one is how we can ease doing business so that foreign investors are able to do things, more directly without having to go through middlemen. In the past, we had what we call the Gateway Secretariat, and we measured all the state agencies that were providing services to business by how quick they were able to respond. And I think that brought Ghana to the #1 position in the ease of doing business in West Africa. Unfortunately, since that time, we have backslided. Today, we're no longer the #1 in West Africa in ease of doing business. We need to work our way back to be able to reach that position. And so we must start a monitoring mechanism where we test from time to time how quickly these things happened, how quickly is a business registered, and we give feedback to the Registrar General and say that, look, somebody wanted to register a business and this is how long they took them. And I remember the Gateway, during the time of the Gateway's Secretariat, they used to get a feedback from immigration. If people arrived at the airport, how quickly they were cleared through immigration. And if they wanted to, whatever they wanted to do with government, how quickly they were able to get access to the services that were required. We need to begin to monitor again so that we're able to get all the government agencies working at par. Now there's a whole plethora of people they call Goro boys, who you have to go and see and give a little something, and in the shortest possible time, they will get you what you're looking for. But if you go yourself, you would be frustrated and frustrated until you give up and go to a Goro boy. And then suddenly what you were looking for, you get it at once. It is a whole culture of bribery, and there are people in those agencies who get a part of what the Goro boys are getting. They don't do it for free. They do it, and they go and give a part of it to whoever are benefiting. So we need to begin the monitoring again. If it means bringing back the Gateway Secretariat to monitor in real time how government agencies are responding to requests for services from business, is something that we need to look at. And for many years, we have had incentives for foreign investors to pan out across the country. And so, for instance, we have an incentive where you have tax holidays for investors who invest in a rural district or a rural area or some part of the country. Unfortunately, until we get our act together, people are going to find it difficult to go to other places because, one, you have logistical issues to look at. Two, you need to look at sources of raw material. Three, you need to look at reliability of and access to enough power. You need to look at access to water and all that. And normally, you would get the best reliability in terms of power, in terms of water, in terms of logistics, close to the capital. And that is why the majority of businesses cluster around the capital. But until we spread out, the incentives for them to be able to do it, put in the railway lines, put in the highways so that you're able to move goods and services fast across our country, you can give the best tax incentives. You're not going to get people to move to other places. And that's why infrastructure comes in. And that's why we're talking about the big push, that over the next 5 years, we want to invest $2 billion a year into infrastructure, especially economic infrastructure, to open up the roads, so that goods and services can move, to invest in the railways so that people can move, products across the country seamlessly, to be able to strengthen the supply of electricity to all parts of the country, to make sure that more water is available to all our major regional capitals so that whoever goes to invest there will not be disadvantaged because they invested there. And so it comes with improving the infrastructure, and it's not only tax incentives that will let them move there, but it's also strengthening the infrastructural and logistical support that will let people go and invest in other parts of the country. We cannot force a foreign direct investor and match him to Bole, my hometown, to go and invest there when he does not have enough electricity power, he does not have enough water, he doesn't have a good road to evacuate his products. And so it will be improving the infrastructure in addition to incentives, that will make people pan out across the country. But we need to do that, because once we don't do that, we create a lopsided development. And that is why everybody is trooping to Accra. And the social services and economic services are no longer able to sustain the huge population increase in Accra. And so we need to look at other places. I've talked about a new city, which will be somewhere in the confluence of Eastern Region, Volta, and Greater Accra. And there will be the Volta River, running through the city. There will be a fast transport link between Accra and the city. And it will be a smart city. It will have an industrial hub, so that we move some of the development out of Accra, not only Tema and other places, but move it a bit more inward and create an opportunity. It will be a tourism hub. We'll put all the amusement parks and water parks and hotels and everything, so that people will come from different African countries and also come to enjoy the hospitality of Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Your framework for economic transformation is clear. The members of the South African Chamber will be pleased to hear that. Sadly, though, over the last decade, our contribution to the foreign direct investment component has dwindled. We used to be very close to the top of the league table. We hope that that will change with what you've laid out. With the aspirations that you've set out, it strikes me that it's going to need two things: liquidity, and lots of it, and an enabler to distribute the liquidity. Probably it's a technology platform. So I would invite you to speak about the importance of the digital economy, and then a robust local financial services sector. Not the money that comes in from foreigners, but the money and liquidity required by smaller Ghanaian companies that are able to supply services to those inbound companies. Thank you.
The most important thing, and that is going to be the prime objective, is to stabilize the economy and to stabilize the currency, and to bring down inflation, and to create a macro environment that is conducive to business. That is the number one objective, because in the current environment, no business can thrive. And so that will be our major outlook. But aside from that, improving the fintech space, implementing digitization in the economy to introduce more transparency and reduce human discretion in many things is the way to go. I spent time as Deputy Minister of Communications and Minister of Communications, and then as Vice President and President, putting in the infrastructure in order that we can have a digital takeoff. We've come a long way in this country with the kind of investment we've made, but technology continues to move, and we must harness that technology. We're on the brink of 5G. Now we have alternatives to fiber, and internet, satellite internet has become more affordable and available. And so where is the technology going to go? We must follow the technology and make sure that we increase the digitization in the economy, and that we make it available to Ghanaian companies to improve their efficiency, but also make it possible for them to get capital and investments at lower interest rates. But you cannot bring down the interest rates unless you stabilize the economy. And so that will still be the number one, and everything else will be value added to the economy. So we'll continue to push digitization, we'll make it available across the country so that everybody is part of the knowledge economy. We would increase the uptake of government in terms of digital services so that everybody is able to access government services in the shortest possible time without some of the complaints that we hear in respect of Goro boys and all that. It should be possible for people to go online and get services within a certain number of days. And we must make the agencies commit that when you go online and you apply for this service, within 3 days or 4 days or whatever the time frame is, you will get a response or you would get the service that you're looking for. So yes, we're in a digital economy, but we must, put in the kinds of investments and also put in the kind of effort that will stabilize, the macro environment and also increase productivity so that we are bringing in more foreign exchange, we're bringing in more investment and making Ghana truly the hub, for production in Africa.
Thank you. And
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Bashira Tukama from the Center for Social Justice and also a labor activist. I have 2 questions. The first one, because we are discussing Coco, I want to know whether you think that the powers that the government have in appointing the chief executive of Coco Board is also a factor to the issues we have with Ghana Cocoa Board. Because Cocoa has several divisions, and in every organization there is a succession plan. How come in institutions like Cocoa Board and other areas, we always have to have an appointee who might not necessarily be an agriculturist or understand how the sector works? Then the second one has to do with the issues of fertilizer. I am happy that you actually mentioned the issues that farmers are facing. But don't we think that utilizing farmers' cooperative is a great way to go? Because farmers' cooperative, they know their members, they are working together, they are a group, they are contributing, they have their own systems that they use, and they are the best people who can actually identify the farmers within their catchment area and be able to point to who a farmer is and who is not a farmer. Because, we've gone to the field and experienced cases where farmers themselves do not get the fertilizer, but it's sold through about 5 people, and they buy them times 5 or times 10, the actual prices. And it's also contributing to the challenges we're currently having with food security. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. The first one is, it's not just Cocoa Board. It's all the state-owned enterprises. Yes. A new government comes and, hounds out all the chief executives and appoints new chief executives. And sometimes a state agency is doing very well. A new chief executive comes, he doesn't have the wherewithal. He's appointed because of his political contribution to a party or because of his influence in a certain party. And over the next period of time, he runs down the agency because he just doesn't have what it takes to run the agency. But unless that changes in terms of the appointing authority of the president, then it will continue. I believe that Cocoa Board needs a shakeup because it doesn't have the right administration. But in appointing a new chief executive, I should not also go and appoint a party apparatchik who has not got the qualification to be able to turn that place around. You should appoint somebody who is there, has the capacity to do what it takes to raise that sector. We looked at all the state enterprises, and the point is, it must be performance related. And so when I was in government, we used to do a performance audit of all the state-owned enterprises. And if they were not running properly, we made changes so that somebody else, goes and continues. And you can always move that person somewhere. Not that he is incapable, but maybe he's not the best fit for that particular sector. But when you can see the agency collapsing, And it started from 2017. Coco Board started posting losses. In 2016, Coco Board posted a profit, and I continued to post a profit until 2017, when the new management came. And since 2017 till I speak today, every year Coco Board was posting losses. I mean, the president should have seen that and made the kind of change that was necessary to stop what was happening. Unfortunately, political loyalty and things is what has been the problem, you know, and so we've waited till we've reached where we are. And one of the things was the farmer was not being given, you know, his just reward for farming. The Coco Board headquarters expenditure was going up year on year. I mean, last year they spent 3.4 billion on headquarters administration. That is farmer money that should have gone to the farmers. And it's not only Coco Board, it's all the state agencies. I mean, if you go to the SIGA report, they have posted huge losses, all of them. Some of them that were breaking even and, you know, actually making a profit have suddenly taken a nose dive. I mean, even of all the industries Nkrumah had, which were under the Gihok brand, all the Gihok factories collapsed. The only one that survived was Gihok Distilleries, because they produce alcohol. When Ghanaians are happy, they drink alcohol. When they are sad, they drink alcohol. When they are not happy or they are not sad, they drink alcohol. And so Gihok Distillery survived. And when I was president, I was called to come and commission a new production line from their own resources. Today, I hear Gihok Distillery workers say they are owed arrears of salaries. How did that happen? Because the president-in-law is the MD. And I hear he's not in good health. They won't change him. You know, that is the problem. Until we can find a system, you know, that holds these chief executives, you know, to a high standard, you know, and have a president who cares about the fact that they're operating properly, then we would continue to have this problem. With regards to agriculture and assistance to farmers, yes, we're going to use cooperatives. So when I talk about the farmer service centers, it is going to work with the cooperatives. And so all farmers who expect assistance from government are going to have to belong to a cooperative that is registered and a legal known entity. And on the farmer service center boards, the leaders, members of the cooperative will be members of the board of the farmer service center, so that they can have a say in how their service center is run. Even though it's going to be private sector run, they would have a board that meets annually to appraise how the service center is running. And as I said when I went around during my primaries, I told the people that in order for you to be able to gain access to government support, whether in agriculture or in any of the other places where government support is required, you have to come as a legal entity so that government knows that you exist and is able to hold you collectively responsible. That thing about going and giving government support to individuals, and once they get it as individuals, nobody has the intent of using it properly for what it is, or if it's supposed to be a loan, you go give Maslok to Fatima Abdullahi, Ya Santua, Ajwa Rose, and what and what. Nobody has any intention of paying. But if Ajwa Rose and Fatima Abdullahi and Ya Santua are members of a cooperative, and you say, look, I'm going to give you this money, lend it to your members, and you are responsible for collecting back, you know, the loan that we have given, it is only then that you can get people to be more responsive. And so, yes, we're going to use farmers cooperatives. Every district is going to register its farmers cooperatives, and government support through the Farmer Service Center is going to go to the cooperatives, and they'll be responsible collectively for paying back, so that if one of their members doesn't pay back and it affects their funding the next year, they will take collective responsibility to make sure that whoever is giving the support is responsible and pays back.
Mr. President, my name is Apia Kusi Adumako from CATS International Accra. Mr. President, one thing we know is that competition law is one of the things that drive people to foreign direct investment. Ghana doesn't have a competition law, But we are happy to see that in your 2024 manifesto, the NDC has pledged to Ghanaians that when elected into office, it would enact competition and antitrust law for Ghana. Now, let me go to my main question. How would you intend to leverage on foreign direct investment to help grow up local and domestic champions in the economy? We've realized that at the beginning of every financial year, when multinational companies start to remit all their profit, it puts pressure on the city, and the city tends to suffer some hemorrhage. So how would you want to help also grow domestic champions as we seek foreign direct investment? And finally, I have also examined the manifestos of the two political parties, including that of NDC, and I've realized that it appears that the two major parties are all shifting to the left. It was President Reagan who said that when government shifts to the left, it is a decimal point in the national debt that shifts to the right. And so with so many social interventions and free trade things, don't you think that we'll end up crippling the fiscal space we have in this country? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, like you said, we need to put in competition and antitrust laws because there are areas in which monopolies can hurt, investments. And so we're going to rely on best practice and expertise. I mean, there's a lot of expertise in terms of the legal framework and best practice across the world to be able to do that. We need to open up competition so that as many people as possible can get into the various sectors. And based on competition, we can get fairer prices for consumers. And so that's something that we've put in the manifesto. Growing local champions, I have been an advocate for growing local champions. And I've always told my friends, we traditionally have been a trading people. And at every point in time, we want to see our investments. And so we have the money, we import the goods, we have the goods, we sell, we get the money. And so at every point in time, we don't want to lose track of our money. But with manufacturing and industry, for a while, you lose track of the money because you set up the factory, you put in the machinery, you are investing, but you don't know whether that money is really going to return a profit. And it's only when the industry is working, you have put in the capital, you've brought the raw material, you've produced, and you've sold before you start seeing money coming in. And we have traditionally been averse to that process. And so several of our people, there's one of my friends, he was setting up a factory, and he was speaking to his friends, and they said, for those of you who understand, I didn't say, you also, yeah, me ta call me site. Oh, yeah, then, oh, me see factory. Who see factory, then? Oh, me they produce soon, I'm going to set up a factory. That's a factory, they're Indian for the Lebanese for the see factory. I just say, yeah, they are near the tongue. Let me say that in English. There's a friend who was recounting a story to me, and he was setting up an industry, a factory, to manufacture something locally. And his friends hadn't seen him for a while. And so when they saw him, they said, where have you been? He said, so I go to my site. They said, what site is that? I said, I'm setting up a factory. To do what? He said, so to produce so and so and so. And he says, factory? Why would you be building a factory? It's Lebanese and Indians who build factories, not Ghanaians. We need to change that mindset. Local people, indigenous investors can set up manufacturing industries. We've done very well in the pharmaceutical space. They're big Ghanaian pharmaceutical companies. And we can do that in other sectors. We can do that in agro-processing. We can do that in textiles. We can do that in so many other areas. We can do that in plastics. I mean, so many areas that we can look at. So growing local champions will be one of the objectives that we have, and encouraging Ghanaians, to be able to move their investments into other industries other than producing pure water. Everybody is producing pure water, or everybody has an FM station. And it takes one person to do it. Then suddenly everybody crowds there. But there are many other places we can all spread out. Everybody is into hospitality, building a hotel. But there are many other places we can encourage Ghanaians to go. And I'll be one of the chief ambassadors and advocates for doing that and hand-holding them and helping them to make that investment. And I'm sure that if they get examples of people who have invested in manufacturing, in industry, a lot of the others will follow suit. And so it's something that we can look at. For developing countries, you need to provide some social safety nets. And so even as the economy is adjusting, especially when you go into programs like the IMF and so on and so forth, you have a group of vulnerable people who fall through the cracks, and you need to make provision for them. And that is why there's a need to have some social intervention projects. But they must be well thought through, and they must be adequately funded. And so, for instance, we have the Ghana Education Trust Fund, which has been responsible for building a lot of the educational infrastructure that we have across the length and breadth of the country. We have the National Health Insurance Levy that allows poor people to access service without having to pay upfront when they go to a health facility. So I wouldn't say that those are all social interventions that are not necessary. I think that they are necessary. We have the free SHS that allows people to send their children to school without having to pay fees, for them to go, so that more children will go into secondary school. The only difference between us and the current government was the Constitution said it should be progressively introduced, and we thought that while we introduce it, we should do a fast-track rollout of infrastructure, because we knew that it was going to lead to an explosion of children coming into secondary school, so that we can be able to accommodate them. And that's why we decided to build 200 new secondary schools, so that more children could get an accommodation. But the government came and said, no, they're going to roll it out immediately, and they did. And of course, the fallout is what we're seeing, poor nutrition, poor quality food, double track system where some go, some stay at home for several months. And so we are dedicated to improving it and streamlining it. And so one of the things I promised was to hold a stakeholder engagement of teachers and educationists and parents and students and everybody to discuss the implementation of the free SHS so that we can improve it in the shortest possible time. And so social interventions are important. We've introduced a new one, and that is because when students have gone through the free SHS, the parents are not paying fees in the secondary school. And then suddenly the child qualifies for university. And then immediately the parent is required to start paying fees again. And so there are many children who have not been able to continue into university, even though they got an admission, because their parents were not able to afford to pay. And so there are several whom I've had to pay fees for, and I'm sure there are many people coming to them, students coming to them and saying, I got admission, my father or my mother doesn't have, and if you don't help me, I can't go to school. There was a medical student who was discovered on a farm somewhere, and he had gotten admission into medical school, but he couldn't take up his position because he couldn't pay the first year fees. We don't want that to happen. At least let them go to the university and start, and it will give the parents the time to adjust. But even then, we need to enhance the student's loan so that when he has gone into university the first year where we've absorbed the fees, in the second year he would have registered for the student loan, so that in the second year he would use the student loan to be able to finance the fees without burdening the parents. And then it allows them to go through the university and finish. And the students' loan, they start paying when they have finished and gotten a job. And then they start deducting to pay back the student loan. So I do think that social interventions are necessary, but they must be well thought through. The funding for them must be well considered. And we believe that we can fund this no fee stress policy for first year by cutting waste. And at least I said, if it will cost about 275 million to 290 million thereabouts to be able to absorb those academic fees. And one of the times I said, look, the Office of the President budget is 2-point-something billion. I'm prepared to give up, 275 million of that money to fund the no-fee stress policy for hundreds of thousands of Ghanaian students who will be going to tertiary education. Thank you.
I think that comes to the end of my role here. And Mr. President, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to play a side here with you.
Thank you, Joe.
I think I will leave with maybe a couple of nuggets here, which is the fact that you've pretty much answered all the questions that we had listed. We have collaboration, comes out very loudly in what you talked about. And effective decision-making is one I can also think about. But what really cuts across from A to Z is transparency. And someone once said, sunshine is the best form of disinfectant. Yeah. So if we really do that and be transparent about what we do, I think we can bring down the level of corruption that we find in our environment and all of that, and be able to do the right thing for the right people that we have in this country. So I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello. Please, a big round of applause for His Excellency.